We're ready to get started. It's a minute past the hour, and that's typically the time I like to give an extra minute or so for people to join. And anyone that still pops on now won't be too far behind anyway. So I'll just get us started right away here and make up some early ground as we get into the discussion. Just as a quick note before I jump into the presentation and then talk about share with you some of the tools and what have you that I have to share. If you have questions along the way, there's a Q&A panel inside of the Zoom control window that's really wonderful to capture your questions right as they come up. And then at the end of the discussion or the end of my presentation, I'll be able to go through those questions and answer all of them in one fell swoop that I can. And any that I can't get to here, I can certainly shoot you an email afterwards if there are more that I can reach in this time that we have here together. So with that, let's just jump in and talk about return on investment and building a business case for proposal automation as an area to invest. I just wanted to give a quick introduction to myself. I'm the VP of Sales here at Expedience. I'm Jason Anderson. But my background is really deep with experience in dealing with proposals and RFPs. As a matter of fact, I bought Expedience. So I learned about this company. My last employer, as we needed to evolve our proposal process. I knew we needed a tool to help do that, and I went to do a competitive process and purchase Expedience. I think it's helpful to share that with you so that I can really talk about not just the process of how great our software is and what it does from someone who has firsthand experience in using it. But in that process, when I bought Expedience most recently, it was the last proposal automation software I purchased, I had to go through and advocate for that purchase with my CEO and had to really document and explain and really build a business case. So some of what I'll be sharing here today, in fact, is kind of an evolution from what I put together then. And I think it's helpful just to talk about what you should expect as far as the return on the investment from looking into proposal automation software. So just for those of you who are newer to Expedience, I like to share the fact that my story isn't that unique for the folks here at Expedience. We are all kind of to a person deeply proposal experienced individuals, oftentimes with 20 plus years of proposal and or proposal automation experience. Expedience was founded by the founders of a company called Pragmatech, who made a software called the RFP machine. And so for those of you that are kind of older timers to the space of proposal software, you'll likely recognize that as one of the very first RFP automation tools on the market. So I share all of this just to share with you the fact that we as a company are really familiar with helping organizations make the leap from manual proposal processes to automated proposal solutions. So let's talk about those manual proposal processes. We created this little image that's meant to look like a kind of a children's game board or a maze of sorts. And while it's mostly tongue-in-cheek or silly, but the process isn't that that far off to say, oh, look, get that new RFP in the door, and the process of going around from person to person and document to document and copying and pasting and trying to make this end result look consistent with messaging and branding and then meeting the deadlines to push this proposal out in time. That back and forth is really common for most organizations that I've worked with and customers that I speak with, even still to this day, that have a manual proposal process in place. So it's not hard to recognize the opportunities there are for mistakes and for inefficiencies here as we're just going through this manual process. But nonetheless, it's difficult to make a business case sometimes. And so I just wanted to talk about that for a second. Why, if the process is that broken, why is it a little bit complicated sometimes to build an effective business case and advocate for the dollars so we can invest in really growing this really critical function? No one argues within the business about the importance of a proposal, and rarely anyone who's aware of the process that we go through when we have a new opportunity to bid or a new RFP, those folks typically know how broken that process is. So you would think it's just sort of an automatic or an autopilot decision, easy to decide how to invest in a tool that would help. But I found that not to be the case. Commonly, customers struggle, and I've struggled historically with really building an effective dollars and cents business case. And I think largely it's because of these things where people have grown, organizations have grown accustomed to the inefficiencies. In a way, they look at these weirdnesses of the back and forths and the copying and pasting and the asking of redundant questions and the interruptions to subject experts that could have been avoided as just kind of a normal cost of doing business, a normal way that we can produce a proposal. And so sometimes it's difficult to actually put it to quantify, right? So, okay, great, how many interruptions might we save and how much do those interruptions cost? Or we're making mistakes because of these annual steps along the way. What are the costs of those mistakes? What is the impact of this whole process on our win rates? These are sometimes hard to put a number next to and say, great, those are the dollars that we're escaping or that we're saving or that we're making instead of making those mistakes. Or having those challenges, those problems. Here are the dollars that we're saving. It's difficult sometimes to calculate. But I'll tell you, it's been very noticeable to us, and I'm sure our competitors as well, that the challenging times that we've gone through when it's come to remote working and less of that shoulder surfing sort of heroes system of having someone put the proposal in their back and run it through the overall process. When we were all co-located, that was one thing. But as we've become more and more remote at times, or forced to be so at other times, I think that the management as a category has become much more aware of these costs in a more kind of obvious way, which I think is helpful from having this conversation now. So I like to share this concept with folks, the idea that with any proposal, there are administrative activities that we do when we're creating a proposal. Those are the core blocking and tackling, if you will, of making the core response document, branding that document consistently with our corporate branding guidelines, and then building some sort of an outline for our response, and then searching through old documents and copying and pasting. All of those core, what I would call administrative functions, are essential, but they're not super value adding. These aren't the things that are going to help us win the business, so to speak. Those strategic functions, however, where we're interpreting what that customer's asking for, they need, and we're building our win themes and our response strategies, and we're then writing customer-specific content, etc., going through some deep review cycles. These are strategic activities that we do that can truly differentiate our services or our products to help us win the business and win more of these RFPs. So you'd like to think that we spend more of our time on those strategic activities than those administrative activities. But what I found is, again, that's not the case. More often than not, and sometimes it's even more slanted than this, where we've wasted so much time in that core administrative activities function that we sometimes have to rush through those more important activities to meet a deadline. So the first thing I like to talk about when we're talking about a business case is to really analyze and think about the time that you're spending on your proposals, and how you would evaluate that total level of effort and where that level of effort falls. Because what I would expect, and what I found when I deployed Expedience and even some other proposal tools in the past, is you should expect a radical reduction in that time that you're spending on those administrative activities, on those core blocking and tackling activities, if you will. There's a temptation here, though, that is not incorrect, but it's just limited. There's a temptation that customers oftentimes start with to say, okay, great, then that savings right there, that's where I can go calculate my return on investment. And oftentimes they'll ask about, okay, how many hours per proposal will I save? And they're going to do some math function that says, okay, great, if I saved X number of hours and our average rate of the people involved with the process is Y number of dollars, then this is the total cost savings, and then they can do some calculations. The nice thing about it is that it's quantifiable, and I recognize that, and it's also real. It is important. It's not as if it's not not a true impact from a return on investment. I just like to share with people that it's not the biggest lever. It is a lever. It's something to consider, but it's something worth again penciling into your overall business case and thinking about again the time savings that you could achieve. There are much bigger levers that you can use or that you could consider in this process. So let's talk about those levers. What are those levers, and why are they more important or more impactful? It's kind of a busy slide, and I'm sorry about that. I didn't know if I should break it up over 2 slides, but I thought I wanted to capture the whole idea in one spot, especially if anyone's wanting to capture notes. But here's the idea. The 2 big levers to consider when it comes to making the business case and deciding whether or not it does or doesn't make sense for your business to invest in proposal automation. The 2 levers are scale and quality. So when it comes to scale, you need to think about things such as the number of opportunities that you're receiving. And commonly, even when you're not receiving a lot of opportunities, but sometimes they get bunched up where we're unable to respond to all of those opportunities because of a lack of bandwidth at this time. So a quick place to start when I'm thinking about scale issues are thinking about a number of opportunities in the last 6 or 12-month period that we might be able to calculate how many opportunities did we not respond to, or qualified RFPs that we otherwise would have put a response into. We would have bid for those services or those or for that business, but we didn't because we didn't have the bandwidth. They all hit at the same time, or we had someone that was out of the office and we were unable to meet the surge in workload at that time. Then I kind of think of that, right? Those number of deals that we didn't bid, and I kind of consider our win rate to say, okay, great. If we typically win whatever 35% of our proposals that we're submitting, if we didn't respond to 3 proposals last year, well, then that's 1 deal that we certainly should have won. And based on some average annual average kind of transaction value, you can quickly come up with quite a number that says, wow, this is the dollars that we probably left on the table when it comes to not being able to meet the scale demands of being able to reach peak volumes where multiple RFPs or multiple proposals were required at one time. The other thing when it comes to scale to consider is the idea of how your business is to scale. As business grows, how does the proposal team need to scale in order to support that growth in our business, right? So as we're anticipating revenue growth, and we know that proposals are a core activity that we do as part of our business development cycle, clearly there's a headcount equivalence to number of proposals, number of people in order to meet those dollars, those revenue targets that we've got for our growth, right? And so the question that I like to ask customers to think about, or the item I like to ask people to think about, are just our growth projections, and trying to think in terms of when we would have to force extra headcount, right? And that's another big investment lever that you can absolutely consider that as it relates to the scale of your current proposal process today. So shifting the concept now over to the quality of the proposals that you're creating, this is another big lever that you could really consider when it comes to building out your business case. Sometimes, and I know I was at my previous employer, when I really did what I'm describing here, and I looked at our completed proposals and looked at the proposals that we didn't win especially, and dug into what went wrong there. There's an opportunity for all of us that are involved with the proposal process to be a little bit protective of that. We don't want to look like goofballs or somehow we're incompetent of making a proposal. But we have to recognize and share that those proposals that were less than optimal are more a result of the circumstances that we can be under when it comes to, oh my gosh, this customer asked for an immediate turnaround in this proposal. We didn't have the cycles that we typically would want to put towards making a better response, and or again, a peak of a bunch of proposals at one time or what have you. So I just offer the opportunity to not take it quite as personally as what I was tempted to do, and really take a critical eye at the proposals that you submitted over again that last 6 or 12-month period is really effective to say, well, great, we won that 35%, but then that means we didn't win that other percentage of business. Let's look at those deals that we lost and see, are there challenges that we can see? Were we really able to articulate our value proposition, thinking back to those strategic activities and that really articulating to that customer why we're the right ones to buy? Did we spend any cycles on those win theme kind of activities, or were we so blocking and tackling focused that we didn't have the cycles to spend over here? Likewise, you might look at mistakes, or kind of taking the grade school teacher's red pen, if you will, to the proposal to see, did we use another customer's name? Did we make other grammatic or other silly copy and paste or manual step mistakes that we are kind of embarrassed by? Is it possible that these proposals may not have received, with your red pen in hand, a passing grade? And the other question to ask then is, if I had more time to spend with writing custom content and writing strategic kind of win theme rich content, how many of these deals might we have won, right? Or if I can improve that quality score of my proposals, what impact might that have on our win rates as a whole, and just how much revenue does that present, right? So not to again, going back to the idea of the time savings here, but while these are hours by some rate and some dollar over here, when it comes to winning just an extra opportunity, most commonly one extra opportunity won more than justifies the investment with any proposal automation solution. And I would hope to think especially Expedience. But certainly these are the activities to think about in terms of the costs associated with your current proposal process, and especially as they relate to your ability to scale and the quality of your proposals. I've got a tool that we've calculated, that we created and we use to help kind of articulate or quantify some of these metrics. I thought I would share that with you here as well, and also share with you some of the customer examples where they've made the kind of leaps that I'll describe here. And maybe we can help to start framing up a decision. I'll tell you, I've got a number of my competitors that I've seen. They've got actual ROI tools out there, and not just in our space either. Other softwares and other solutions out there where they attempt to say, "Give me two numbers," and they calculate an actual number that you're to expect. I'm always very hesitant to listen to that kind of math when it's done so willy-nilly. That's where we land on this process to say, if we could kind of quantify based on what we're dealing with today, where we sit on this matrix of our quality to capacity kind of capabilities, and compare that to, if we could, to a future state that's reasonable for our world that we live in, now we can start to actually do some comparative analysis around other organizations that have made that same leap. So let's just talk through this quickly. And when it comes to these capacity channels, you'll see that capacity challenges, you'll see that it talks about how quickly are we able to complete proposals. Right now, maybe that's a slow challenge for us, or maybe we're not able to respond to RFPs, and we are occasionally missing deadlines, and we've got way too much time on the admin efforts. That's for sure. And maybe we think we're doing a good job on editing, but we do have a lot of kind of senior people along the way that we've got to focus on bring involved in that process. Lots of interruptions to our subject experts. Obviously, onboarding is a real concern because everything's so manual right now. Maybe we don't have to worry about self-service proposals, or maybe the increasing demand, obviously, as our business grows. You can see what's happening here, that my little Excel spreadsheet, that as I'm starting to quantify these capacity challenges, my capacity score has just gone from what it could have been very good at one point to something that's much less attractive. Likewise, from a quality perspective, when we're doing that analysis, did we find a bunch of avoidable mistakes? Did we find a bunch of consistency or branding problems, or other inabilities to, or limited capabilities to incorporate that client rich, win theme rich content? Or did we have out of date information at times where we saw someone accidentally copied and pasted from a proposal that was way too old, etc.? Or other consistency challenges, as we have a lot of people involved now as making proposals. The proposal team has grown, but where consistency from proposal to proposal might be challenged. Other things it's asking about are graphics or charts. Maybe we do a good job at that, and maybe we have a lot of, this is a real common challenge actually, where we have a lot of really data-centric elements to our proposals, and where we might not be, making 1,000 errors here, a few errors in these data-centric driven proposals, like a lot of my, not just any one industry, but certainly financial organizations are a big common challenge for this, where they have a lot of metrics and dollars and up to the minute kind of stats and data elements that need to be incorporated into their proposals that create a real risk and a real problem to keep consistency and accuracy. How about time that we have to tailor? How about, again, lack of polish or professionalism? So I'm just kind of capturing these at random, and certainly our goal would be to have you think through these with some sense of balance, right? You don't want to be overly harsh on yourself, but you also want to be kind of eyes wide open as to what's happening right now. This future state column allows me to say what's reasonable, and I'm just going to grab some at random, like maybe these things, I just don't know if we can ever achieve that. Maybe we can never quite achieve this one, or that might not be possible as well. But you can start to calculate quickly a reasonable perspective as to where we're at now, and from an outcomes perspective, what do we think we could likely achieve through proposal automation? So here's a couple different case studies I wanted to share with you of customers that have made some of these leaps. I want to share with you first what their chart looked like, and then talk about specifics around what they experienced after they deployed the software. So this first customer, as you can see, they actually did an excellent job around creating a beautiful, quality, highly branded, accurate, detailed proposal. They were making them in InDesign. What they described was a real challenge from a capacity perspective, and they were slow and expensive and really handcuffing the business from being able to get a quick response. And they knew that because of the lag that it took for them to make these beautiful documents, that they were absolutely losing business, where their competitors could move more quickly with proposals and to produce a response to that customer. So they had concerns when they went to Expedience. They thought, well, wait a second, we're doing this in InDesign, and we don't want to give up on any of our branding elements. Our presentation is key to our proposals. So we're not willing to give up anything with any of the ground that we have when it comes to the quality of the proposal, but we need to increase in our capacity, move more quickly, reduce our cost per proposal. And so these were their outcomes. They had a real reduction. Their average time to complete for their proposals prior to deploying Expedience was about 9 days. They had some that were much longer and some that were shorter, but they said that was the average time to complete. And that, with the exact same or very, very similar proposal, has been reduced from 9 days to 3 days. So clearly, there's a huge impact from just dollars and cents savings, back to that bar chart and the bracket talking about time savings to talk about here. But what they found, I think, was a bigger impact when it came to the ability then to get more proposals out, and, like I said a moment ago, the ability to respond more quickly with the proposal, increase their opportunity to win more business. So they've calculated their ROI, and they were, I think, a little bit conservative in doing so, to say that within about 4 months after they went live with Expedience, they achieved 100% return on their initial investment. Since that first go live, this organization's actually come back to say, let's evolve, let's grow, let's automate, talk about the data elements that they were bringing in. They used Excel. They use Excel for a lot of these really kind of number-centric kind of elements to their proposals. So they've got the next phase of their evolution of their Expedience proposal automation solution is to automate those Excel variables, those Excel metrics and data from the Excel spreadsheets and tables and charts into proposals automatically. And again, that's they anticipate even a greater impact on their time to be able to get the proposal out the door. And again, also an accuracy bump from taking away a very manual and risk-loaded activity when it comes to copying and pasting all these elements from Excel. So one last example to talk through is an organization that's more common. Most customers don't look like my first example, where they're just off the chart on quality. More often than not, they're sort of in this range where, because of the manual processes and because of the workload and because of the customer expectations on turnaround time, their quality is commonly as challenged as the capacity. So don't be offended if when you do that analysis of your of your proposal process that you find yourself in that lower left-hand quadrant as well. But this particular solution, this company is a technology solutions provider that had a real manual process that was just extremely rushed because of the workload. What happened was, again, a real quality and capacity problem set. So initially they set their goal out just to have a searchable content, a library of formatted answers to eliminate time that they were wasting in finding content and eliminate the challenges they were having when it came to enforcing branding standards, etc. So they deployed our solution, and when they did so, they found a lot of impacts. First of all, the bulk of their proposals, actually, weren't that kind of 70-30 between that strategic and manual activity, like my little bar chart showed. Their proposals were largely repetitive content, lots of moving parts, but moving parts of repetitive content, that they saw 95% reduction in all of the administrative efforts. And so the proposal speed went through the roof, but also their quality scores, when they talked about the impact of all of those copy and pasting kind of mistakes, and they eliminated those mistakes, that they're just regular blocking and tackling of creating a professional quality proposal went up, which had a direct impact to their win rate. So again, this is the storyline that I like to share with organizations when they think in terms of how do we best prepare a business case and talk through with our leadership around why why it might be time, why it might be worthy of our investment in this area of proposal automation. So with that, that's the main content I want to share with you right now. So I thought we can just jump into any questions that you might have and share other ideas. I'm happy to share or to respond to. I've just gone over to my little Q&A panel to see what's come in through so far when it comes to these questions. Okay, so a couple questions here. The questions around, do I have tips when approaching leadership and building a business, building awareness, building the awareness of the need. So the first thing I would share with you is, again, when I did this, and even as I've talked to lots of proposal champions, there is a tendency that we all have to talk in terms of the amount of time it's going to save us, the proposal writer, or how much easier to make my job, or what have you. Not to say those are unimportant; those are absolutely essential elements for you to consider, but when it comes time for the business case discussion and really advocating for this investment, I found those to be probably the least effective levers to use. The financial arm or the executive arm of your business needs to understand, again, the financials, how this is going to impact the business. So when thinking about, again, ability to scale, ability to grow with the business, ability to win more business, those are much more effective levers. So that's the other tip I would offer, is just not to leverage not to spend a lot of time on your personal, how much happier it makes you. Hopefully, though, it'll make you just that happy, though, for sure. Another question is around the impact of time. So I don't know if I'm getting this question exactly right, and please feel free to correct me if I've got it wrong, but they're asking about, are there other impacts or return on investment impacts from just the time saved than just those hours? And the only thing I can think of right now is another angle. The other angle is this. So going back to this chart back over here, right? That this has. So I've got the little Q&A panel in my way. I can't tell if I see this or not. There it is. So there is another arm here that this time savings does for us, which is instead of just having a go, no go, or a bid, no bid decision process when it comes to we received a new opportunity for bid, do we want to do it, yes or no? Do we want to invest the time, yes or no? A tool like Expedience will allow us to have a different conversation to say, okay, how much do we want to invest in this deal? Maybe all of them become let's bid on all business, but we don't treat them all the same. So that you can envision that if this were a different customer, it may not, or a different opportunity than on this particular chart, right? This chart says this particular opportunity I chose to really maximize my time savings and reduce the total time it takes for me to complete the proposal. But what if this is a repeat opportunity or a customer that we're really strategically positioned to win the business and it makes sense for us to invest differently, right? So there's an idea that you can envision of this orange bar growing, so to speak, as it might make sense to further invest in this particular opportunity and really increase our win rate by doing an excellent job for them directly. Just one or two last little questions, and if no more come in, then we can be done early, I think. And if not, then I can happy to stay for a little longer. The next question's around the ROI calculator tool I just shared, and they asked if I could send it to them. And the challenge I have right now is I don't have it in a really shareable format. I've got all these things sort of exposed in my calculations in a way that I don't have it easily shareable. Happy to share it with you, but the easiest way of doing that might be just to reach out to me directly. And I'll just, as I'm going through this last question, I'll have my contact details up here on the screen again. But reach out to me directly, please, and I'm happy to basically do so with you sort of interactively with your content and your questions and your responses to those elements and give you that output, something that you can use to really build into your business case with your leadership team. Okay, last question I have right now is around the typical ROI period. The question is, hey, is there an average payoff time? Is there an average time to pay off? And I'm sure there's some mathematical average I could create, but I could go find or go collect. But the challenge is this really varies greatly from organization to organization, and sometimes it's difficult for some organizations to really effectively quantify. So I talked about the 4-month ROI for that one example organization a moment ago, where I said they're probably a little bit conservative with how they calculated some of those elements, right? That might actually have been a faster return than that, but it does vary greatly from organization to organization. I will share with you that I don't have a single customer that's gone through the ROI analysis process where they've tried to put a pen and paper to the impact and the financial return that saw an ROI of greater than 24 months. That would be an extremely long return on investment. I'd say the most common results that I've seen are in the 3 to 12 month range of the impact. I know, again, going back to my own example of my when I deployed Expedience back at my former employer, my return on investment was much more quick because it was a scenario where I was just describing, where I had a flood of RFPs at one time, where we absolutely would not have responded to those RFPs. Keep in mind, a flood of RFPs wasn't 50 for us; it was 3 at one time. But the size of the team that I had did proposals, 3 RFPs at the same time was more than we could handle before Expedience. So when we won all 3 pieces of business, I could say absolutely categorically, we've won a piece of business that we would not have otherwise, because I would have had to reject one of those 3 proposals prior to. So our ROI was months after, maybe 2 months, I can't remember, maybe 3 months, I don't recall, but it was right away. Right after we deployed Expedience and we were live, we were able to again process those RFPs and win business that we otherwise would not have. I hope this is helpful. It's a really interesting topic to me because it's important to think in terms of, again, the business impact that comes from any software investment or any investment period, but especially software. We need to be mindful of making good investments and bringing in solutions that really help our business and have an impact to our bottom line. And I think the proposal software is an excellent example of a tool that does just that. Happy to share this with you. Happy to work with you on your business case and share either experiences that I've had personally or experiences of other customers, and even if it makes sense, connecting you with other customers that have gone through a similar sort of uplift from their current state to the after experience state, so you can really get a sense from them what they experience directly. But please don't hesitate to reach out with me. And if I just look one more time to see if there's any remaining questions, I think that's all of them that I've got right now. So with that, we shall conclude a bit early. I hope this is awesome for everyone, and look forward to chatting with you directly and working on your proposal cases and your business case for proposal software.